The very first axiom of cybersecurity is we're not relevant until we fail. And that is the only possible way that we can even keep pace with the attackers. The more they're connected to their community to learn from the collective base of knowledge, those wisdom, right? Now we've got that right talent in there that we can move things around and people have career paths and we're getting better and better and better. It's not an easy problem and it doesn't get solved automatically. There's no magic wand. It's a lot of hard work in all the different areas.
The cybersecurity industry is struggling with way too much overhead. We must increase the budget to ensure that we are protected while reducing costs to minimize fraud, waste, and abuse that is leaving the industry unsustainable if we do not figure this problem out. Today, we have TopCyberPro Matthew Rosenquist to discuss this and so much more. Welcome to the show, Matthew. How you doing, man?
Doing great, thanks. Looking forward to our conversation today. Such a great topic, by the way.
Absolutely. I know we had a chance to kind of talk before we went live here on this show. Man, I've watched some of your videos, and I know that man, you're a tremendous speaker. You share a lot of great content that's out there. I recently watched something here that really kind of struck me as being very, very profound, and that's readiness. You know, it's one of those things that we're not ready for certain things. And, you know, and I think that that's really kind of an overarching theme here. And I do have some great questions bent around why do we suck at being prepared for cybersecurity? You have no idea how hard I laughed at that, but we do. We truly suck at like cybersecurity. Why is that?
Well, you know, if you think about the nature of why we even exist, it's because bad people are doing bad things.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the very first axiom of cybersecurity is we're not relevant until we fail. So it isn't until the attackers, and they maintain the initiative, right? I mean, the bad guys get to decide if they're going to attack, what they're going to attack, how they're going to do it, and all of that. Security tends to be a response action to that. Something bad happens, now I need to secure it. So we're always kind of behind the curve. The attackers maintain that initiative, and in order for us to get the funding and support and everything else that we need, well, there has to be justification. So we're always going to be part of that lag. It's just inherent in our industry, and we just have to accept it and move on and do the best we can.
Yeah, and I know we're continuously working hard on that. So let's go ahead and dive on here. But before we get to the bulk of our questions today, I kind of want to know a little bit about your journey getting into cybersecurity, leading the way to being a CISO.
Yeah, you probably don't want to know. I've been in the industry for 35 years. I actually started, working in countering theft and fraud and embezzlement and so forth. When I joined Intel Corporation, one of the first things I did in security is they brought me in to justify, build out, and manage the company's first 24/7 security operations center. So, you know, this is back in the day when those really didn't exist. So, you know, kind of blaze the trail there. And once you realize you have a SOC, well, then you realize, okay, I also need a crisis response capability. So, okay, hey, Matthew, go build that and lead that. So I was actually Intel's first CERT commander, if you will. We call it something else, or we did at the time. But so anytime the company was attacked, and then you think, okay, well, let's start working on some of the prevention stuff. Can you manage security for the IT clients? Okay, great. Hey, our factories are getting attacked, and that's causing us inordinate pain and loss. Can you go figure that out, right? And so just one job after the next, I ended up building out M&A security for the company. I ended up managing the security strategy for what was called Intel Security. We bought this little company called McAfee at the time. You may have heard of it, and a whole bunch of other companies, and bulked it all together in what was called Intel Security. So I managed the security strategy for that. I managed security for things going into the hardware chip, the Intel Core chips. So you start getting exposure into the hardware layer and into the software and the operating system and the applications and the entire ecosystem. And you start looking at, okay, well, who's attacking and why, and what are their capabilities? And that begins rounding out your understanding. And that enables you to develop strategies to be able to help the industry. And so, for over 25 years, I've been advising businesses, governments, and academia on best practices and also what's coming next. Because yesterday is really causing what the pain of today. And that's all great. That's all kind of education. But what we're really interested in is what's coming tomorrow. That's how we get ahead of that curve we were talking about. If you can start to predict and prevent, now you're starting to, the efficiency and the effectiveness really jumps up. And that's where that value proposition comes in. So that's kind of my background. I've been a CISO and advisor, and I'm on 15 different advisory boards. And I love doing this stuff.
I love that. And it reminds me, so I was in IT for 24 years when I was active duty military, and I can relate to the bouncing around. You have to, though. So it's one of those things that, and this is one of the things that I always tell everybody, look, we all have knowledge, we all have skills, but the number one thing that separates each and every one of us is our experience and our experiences. And I truly believe that when we can bring some of that knowledge, skills, experiences to the table, it makes us the total package so that no matter where we are basically of value to those that have put their faith and trust within us to do our job. What are your thoughts about that?
Oh, I think it's hugely important, right? Some people look at those big problems and go, oh, I want to avoid it. I've always looked at, I want to be a part of that next impossible problem. I want to go in there and figure it out and solve it. And that helps me. It helps my organization. It helps the industry if I share that information, but it also helps me. And this is a continual learning process. I don't know it all, but I'm going to keep learning every single day, and I'm going to keep pursuing those impossible problems. And I'm going to work with fellows in my industry to be able to communicate and share our knowledge, experiences, our successes, and our failures, because we all get stronger. We all get better. Cybersecurity is a team sport, and that is the only possible way that we can even keep pace with the attackers. And by the way, they're really good at working together, sharing, collaborating, helping each other. We need to do the same thing in security. So it is a journey, and that's how we contribute.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think that, and we'll dive into that here in a little bit, because I do have some questions bent around lessons learned, best practices, things like that. But here's what I want to know. So you're a CISO right now, and I got to know, is there any such thing as a typical day as a CISO, or is even in cybersecurity alone? What's a typical day like for you, or
beyond the pain and anguish of every day? No. It really isn't a typical day. Every CISO works for a different organization. Each organization is going to have different goals and objectives, and they're going to have different challenges and types of infrastructure and people and assets they're trying to defend. But in general, if you wanted to take the 10,000-foot level, you could say, okay, a CISO is going to look to see, first off, right, they're checking their email at 3 a.m. or whatnot, looking at the text message. Is there anything big and burning that just came up? Because we deal with a tremendous amount of ambiguity. And again, we don't set the pace. The attackers decide when they want to attack. So if they want to attack at 2 a.m. on a Saturday morning, right, well, that's when we're working, because we need to then jump in. We can't call a timeout and go, you know what? I had a late night last night. I was at the bar. Attackers, can this wait until Monday at about 9 a.m.? Can we schedule something? It doesn't work. So the first every day is Monday, yes. And a Monday is better than a Saturday morning, right? But so, the first thing you tend to do is go, okay, what's really on fire that I didn't know about, because I have to jump into that. And then the second thing is, okay, for the fires we did know about and we are working on, let's get an update. Are we making progress? Do we need to take it to a different direction? Do we need more resources? Can we reallocate? And I would say the third thing would be, okay, these are the fires I know about. Let's start looking about that future. And in many cases, CISOs simply don't even have time for this third area of focus. But if you can, you really should be looking ahead, right? I need to learn, I need to educate, I need to help my organization get better, and I need to be able to look forward to be able to prepare. So yeah, if you've got time, and at best it might be a sliver of your time, but it's well worth it. So at a 10,000 foot level, yeah, new fires, current fires, and then what are the future fires?
I love that. It reminds me of a John Maxwell quote. John Maxwell has this amazing quote where he talks about everything rising and falling on leadership. And I truly believe that. I truly believe that everything rises and falls on leadership. And yeah, I'm actually writing about that within one of my newest books that's going to come out here pretty soon, where I'm talking about leadership versus likership. Look,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, we need leadership. We don't need likership. We really don't. Now, don't be wrong. I want to be known, liked, and trusted. But at the end of the day, leaders need to make decisions. They really do. They need to make decisions. But every organization has a budget. They need to increase that budget. They need to make sure their assets, their resources, all these different things are protected. But how do we, as the leaders, as the subordinate or junior leaders within our organization, how do we communicate those challenges to our higher ups to really get buy-in from that leadership to increase our budget, resources, assets, training, and so on? How do we do that?
Well, I think you've nailed a very, very important aspect of leaders, right? They have to make decisions. And I would even caveat that and say they need to make good decisions. You can be a bad leader, you're just making bad decisions, right? You want to be a good leader, which means you need to make good decisions. And good decisions in our world, in the cybersecurity world, really need to be tied to those overarching business goals of the organization. Right. If you're a company, typically it's about profit, right? It may be about market share or growth. It may be whatever. But your cybersecurity goals should be tied to those. Why? Because you need to be making good decisions, and good decisions is to the benefit of your organization. So as part of the good decisions, though, you also have to then communicate and advocate. You have to be that evangelist. So yeah, you could make a good decision just quietly and just execute to it, but more than likely, you're not going to get the support that you need above nor below. People tend not to be highly motivated unless they understand why they're doing something. So the very best leaders out there are going to make good decisions tied to the corporate goals. They're going to loop in, right, and advocate across their peer group and above to say, this is why, this is the benefit of this investment in security, and this is what we're going to deliver. This is how we protect, or how we maintain regulatory compliance, or how we enable sales, or how we're going to contribute to market share or margin or average selling, whatever it is. And that then starts getting, hey, you are helping the business, and you start getting that board level, that C-suite level, and that C-peer level, especially around profit centers, right? Whatever your products are, they start to come on board going, hey, yeah, you're helping me do what I need to get done. But equally, now you need to communicate downwards. You have to communicate to your security staff, hey, we're going to take this direction. Tell them why. Tell them how it's contributing to their options, their shares, their customer base, right? And as we go down in the organization, you need to get everybody bought in. Why? Because you need them to act in secure ways. Their secure behaviors are important. And whether it's that vice president or all the way down to the person that's emptying the trash late at night, you need them to make good security decisions. So again, communication and getting everybody on board. A good leader brings teams together to do things that individuals couldn't do by themselves.
I
good
love
decisions,
that.
good communication.
You really kind of hit on about two or three really good things there. One, organizations are really worried about that bottom line. What's the profit? If we can profit from this, and I think at the opposite end of that spectrum, the losses, and if you can communicate the losses or the potential losses for that, I don't really want to take it from like a fear-based thing, but I think that, regulatory compliance can make the average leader pucker if they're not compliant. It's kind of one of those things. So, and this is really important, especially when it comes to regulatory compliance. So when it comes to that, because I really want to focus on that, because I think that that's where most, organizations, teams, leaders tend to the pucker factor increases when it comes to regulatory compliance. What must we prioritize, and where exactly can we accept risk in order to maintain regulatory compliance?
Yeah, regulatory compliance is one of the convenient areas, to be perfectly honest, in cybersecurity, because it's very, very clear. You have to have A, B, and C. And if
Mhm.
you don't, you're not compliant. And
Mm.
if you can't have that discussion about risk of loss, because risk of loss, you mentioned it, right? Businesses are really interested in profitability. The connection there is losses take away from that profitability.
Mhm.
So if you can't have that discussion and say, hey, here's a risk of loss, which is really saying expect this amount of loss over time, and that takes away from your profitability. These are all incredibly difficult conversations to have, by the way. If you can't do that, well, all right, I'll just go and default to regulations because those are really clear. It's
Mhm.
really tough for me to confidently measure risk of loss, right? So instead, let me do something that is very, very crisp and clear. But then you start painting yourself into a corner because being regulatory compliant is not the same thing as being secure. In
Mm.
fact, when you look at all these big breaches and all these big issues coming up in the news in those regulatory, areas, all those companies were regulatory compliant. And
Mhm.
yet they were still victimized. They still experienced huge losses and impacts to the reputation and downtime and everything else. So if you want to go down the path to say, okay, well, regulatory compliance is easy, I can get money for that, you may succeed, but you may fail in your overall job,
Mhm.
right? And at the end of the day, the C-suite and the board are going to come back and go, yeah, you said we were compliant. Why did we just get hacked? Why did we just lose money? Why did we just lose market share?
Mhm.
We did what you said.
Mhm.
Okay, that's a failure in cybersecurity leadership.
Mm.
You did not properly communicate. Yeah, we need to do regulatory compliance, but we need to do more than that. Now I
Mhm.
have to explain what that is and justify it. And that's exceedingly difficult in our industry.
Yeah, one of the things that I really don't like, especially within software design and engineering, is minimal viable product. Would you agree that regulatory compliance is a minimal viable, well, I don't want to say product, but maybe it is. I don't know.
A minimal viable level, yes, it is minimally viable to help get things out the door,
Mhm.
but don't expect it to work well. And when you're talking about a minimal viable product, you're not talking about the one that you're going to make all your money off of,
Mhm.
right? You're not talking about that stable product that's scalable, that has all the features, that's competitive. You're talking about how can I get the minimum out the door that I can showcase, hey, at least it lives and breathes. It's
Mhm.
not vaporware. It kind of exists in the real world or the real digital world. The same thing in cybersecurity. Regulatory compliance says, hey, we've got something, right? We can show something. Yeah, it isn't your end state. You're not going to be happy with it, right?
Mhm.
This is not scalable. It's not robust, but it's alive.
Mhm.
And that's about all I can say about it. So, yeah, it's that minimum requirements, but it is not a cybersecurity program that any organization should go, yeah, I'm happy with that. That's probably the right level of risk for us. If they
Mhm.
truly understood what that risk profile was going to be, they would go, no, 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 I'm not happy with that. We need more. But again,
Mhm.
if we don't communicate that, that becomes a failure of cybersecurity. If an inexperienced CISO goes to the board and says, hey, great news, we are now compliant. The
Mhm.
board thinks, great, I'm done investing in security. You're not going to get any more money. You're not going to get any more support. If a experienced CISO goes in and says, hey, we're security compliant, phase one done, and they go, well, wait, we're done, right? No, 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 no. Based on this being regulatory compliant, we should only expect to be hacked once every 18 months. Really? 18 months? Yes. And we expect it to be about a $2 million loss based on where we're at. Now, if you're okay with that, if you're okay, board of directors, if you're okay, C-suite, with being hacked every 18 months at about a $2 million hit, I can keep us where we're at.
Mhm.
Oh, that's not good enough. We need to, okay, great. Then let's talk about the investment in security and find that optimal balance where what you're going to spend and the friction that it introduces is good enough to reduce the risk down to a level that is okay with you. Can't get rid of all risks. That's impossible. So let's find out that right level of risk, that right balance between that risk, that cost, and that friction. That's what I'll target.
Would you consider accepting risk, knowing that there could be a loss? Would you consider that to be fraud, waste, or abuse, or do you just accept it?
Officially, as a CISO, I'm not the one that's accepting the risk. I'm the expert to inform the CEO, and in many cases, the board. Here are your choices. Where do you want to be on that spectrum? If you want to accept the risk as the representative of the shareholder, at this level, knowing that there's going to be severe impacts, okay, you are literally, and from a fiduciary perspective, you are their representative. Who am I to say that's not right? Now, there will be consequences, and let me tell you, this is what we can do. But if that's the level that you're acceptable and you're making an informed decision, I'm helping you with the information side, and you say, nope, that's good. Okay. And the reality is there are going to be other business factors as a CISO that I don't know, I don't understand. So I am the expert on cybersecurity, so I will help them understand that risk, the risk of loss and what to expect. And they should make that business decision, just as they accept risk in all sorts of other areas of running the business. There's competitive risk, there's financial risk, there's all sorts of different things that they need to make decisions on. Cyber is simply another one on that list.
I love it. And it really kind of comes down to this. This is exactly what it comes down to. It's really not a matter of if, it's a matter of when you will be targeted. But the real issue is are you prepared for that attack when it happens? Because it's going to happen. I think that the average, person, company, you would like to believe that you've put all measures in place to mitigate as much of the loss or the risk, when it does happen. But tell me, what types of data are really most at risk? So when the attack happens, what type of data is really most at risk? And what are some things that we can do to mitigate as much of that risk as possible?
Wow, that's a large question. So let me attack it here from the beginning, because you said at some point you're going to be attacked. The reality is, let me clarify that. You're being attacked every single day. Every single day, probably every single minute. Every phishing attack that you get in your email is an attack. It's an attempt. Doesn't mean it's going to be successful, but it actually is somebody going, I'm going to try and victimize this person or this company. So we see attacks all the time. If you look at firewall logs, they're coming in every second, right? So attacks are happening all the time. What we're really talking about is when our preventative measures will not be sufficient to prevent an exploitation, right? Impacts. And yes, eventually there is going to be something that gets by. And it could be technical, it could be behavioral, it could be an attack on process, sure. But eventually something's going to give. It's just the nature of the beast. And then we get in from the, okay, we should have been able to predict and prevent the vast majority. We know some things are going to get through. So, okay, we need to have detection capabilities and response capabilities. Detection capabilities to detect as fast as possible, right? Because prevention and prediction really kind of avoid loss. But when an attack is successful, now you want to reduce that loss that actually occurs. So you need to be able to detect it quickly and be able to have efficient and effective response capabilities. Again, you want to shrink the overall impact, the overall loss. And then you want to continuously feed that loop to learn, right? In the military, they've got, the Air Force has a great, acronym for it to be able to reorient and feed that back into your intelligence loop and just continue the process. It's continuous improvement. What can we do and what's being targeted? It really depends on the type of organization, the type of sector you're in, and the type of bad guys, or we call them threat actors. Type of threat actors that are coming after you. And we can group these threat actors into archetypes. Cyber criminals, for example, real big archetype. Data miners, another big archetype. Nation state attackers, another. And each one of these archetypes have their own motivations, which lead to objectives. They have a certain amount of resources, a certain willingness to break the law and even cause harm to people, right? And based on that, that determines what they're going to target, who they're going to target, and the methods that they're going to go after. The more we understand that, the better off we are at putting forth defenses.
Mhm.
Now, one of the worst things we can do is kind of like spread it out evenly, right? Well, we need to defend everything. Well, Frederick the Great said this hundreds of years ago, right? To try and defend everything basically means you defend nothing. What you have to do is you have to weight your defenses to where those most likely attacks are. So if you're a healthcare company, or let's say a healthcare data management company, you handle data records, right? You really need to protect the confidentiality of those records, because you know that's what's valuable, and the attackers that are going to come after you, they're coming after that PHI, that personal health information. If you're a financial company, you know what they're coming after? They're coming after your money. They're coming after financial transactions. What you really need to focus on is the integrity of those transactions. Because the moment somebody can go in there and start moving decimal points or changing account numbers, really bad things are going to happen. They're not trying to take you offline. They're trying to change that so that they can steal the money. If you're an internet company, right? Let's say a telecommunications company, they're really trying to take you offline, right? They're trying to create a denialist service, and maybe they're going to blackmail you, or maybe that's just their goal. And you have to now protect the availability of your systems. So every sector, and in fact, every company, that leader that has to make good decisions needs to know, what really should I be protecting, and who should I be protecting it from? Everybody's a little different. That's why there is no simple, straightforward playbook for cybersecurity. It all varies.
Yeah, I love that, and some of the keywords that you hit in there: prediction, prevention, protection, response. Those are all keywords right there that I really think that, all leaders need to put within their toolkit here. And speaking of toolkit, one of the most profound things that I have within my toolkit is a lessons learned program. For years, I've just been gathering lessons learned, and I've seen it in some organizations. I have not seen it in others. And then I've seen, they're behind, they're trying to catch up, and they're trying to build a lessons learned program. A lessons learned program is really just one of those highly documented databases where anyone with access can kind of pull things like training, analytical reports, resources, all these different things. What would you consider the most important aspects of creating this database or this resource to empower anyone to use this to really learn, grow, and develop?
Well, there's many different levels that these wisdom systems, right? Gathering those tribal knowledge of what happened yesterday, whether it was to you or to somebody else, and then being able to kind of put it together in a format that anybody can use. And sometimes they're just internal to your organization. Sometimes it's just for your sector, and sometimes it's wide open in the world. We have some on the technical side, we have some on the behavioral side, and we have some on the process side, and they're all valuable in different ways. On the technical side, right, if you look at vulnerability databases, CVE is a great vulnerability database. Basically, that's taking the knowledge of what we've seen, the vulnerabilities in different applications, and even potentially exploits, and put it in an open database that anybody can access for the 7 to 12 new vulnerabilities that are discovered every single day, because it's really tough to keep track. Okay, that makes a lot of sense, but who wants to spend their day just looking at all of these? So you've got intelligence systems that sit on top of those, that take that data, extrapolate it out, and maybe create some firewall rules or other things that you can just automatically connect, and they implement all by themselves. Okay, great. These type of wisdom systems, especially automated ones, can now scale. That's great. You've got systems, wisdom systems that talk about those threat agents, right? It'll look at APT, whatever, or whatever sandworm or whatever group you want to talk about, and look at, okay, what tools do they use? What industries are they targeting? How are they growing or expanding? And that type of threat intelligence, again, lends itself. You can look internally to say, what kind of internal processes have we seen? Hey, we just had a password, some passwords get compromised. Great. Let's do that post-mortem. Let's figure out why. Let's figure out who was being targeted. Maybe it was a brute force attack. Maybe having only requiring 6-character passwords that probably may not be sufficient anymore, right? Now that we can see all of this, let's bump that up. And then let's take it another step further and go, okay, we're going to bump it up to 10 characters. But let's put in a note that says every 2 years, we want to reevaluate this. We don't want to get caught with our pants down. We want to be more predictive, and maybe we need to increase that strength or change to multi-factor or whatever, right? But again, there's process, there's people or behavioral wisdom systems, and then there's technologies. All of them are important if we're going to try and keep pace with all the innovation that's going on the attacker side.
You said something really profound there, and it reminds me of comfortability, simplicity versus security. You know, people just want easy. Like, why do I have to have more than 6 characters? Why do I have to have more than 10? Well, gosh, I had to have 15, and then I had to change it every 6 months and this, that, and the other. So where do we really balance that, you know, the easy part of that, the simplicity part of it versus the security? How do we balance that?
And that's a try. And you know, you mentioned balance, and when I was talking earlier about finding that optimal level, it's really about finding that balance. And having a 15-character password that you have to change every 30 days, right, is a high level of friction. And that's one of the factors. We have to look at the friction. It can be friction to users, to employees, to developers, to release of products. It can be friction to our vendors, suppliers, and most importantly, to our customers. Imagine if you told your customer, your online customer, hey, you need to have a 15-character password. They would hate you. In fact, they would probably go to another vendor. Why are you doing this? So there's a trade-off, right? And we have to understand what that is. We have to communicate that. And it takes more than security to figure out what that right balance is. In fact, in most cases, that's an executive level discussion. And you may have to go to the executives and go, hey, we're seeing a lot of our customers getting victimized because we don't require strong authentication, right? We only require a 4-character PIN. All right. You know, now we can reduce all that negative impact to our customers, right? Maybe increase our trust and our brand and security, but I've got to then increase that password, or I need to mandate second factor or multi-factor or do some other things. Hey, executive leaders, you know your customers, you know your products. What's the right balance for you? Keep it the way it is and just suck up and potentially lose trust in customer base? Do you want to go to the far end and, hey, I can enforce multi-factor, right? And do all of these different things. It's going to be more friction. They're not going to like you as much, right? Where do you want to be on that scale? And that's where those constructive discussions happen. And it's typically not on the extremes. They want to know, well, give me some more details and some more options. How do we fine tune this? Okay, right here, this is where we want to be. Awesome. I'll hit that target.
Right. I love that. You reminded me of something that we did years ago. We put on this event called Cyber Bowl. And before anybody entered the building, we had them sign a user agreement. This was absolutely hilarious. You're going to love this. We had everybody sign a user agreement when they entered into the building. It was a week-long event of training. We called it Cyber Bowl. And about midway through the event, we started calling people up on stage, just out of random. And it was like, hey, we want, you know, Matthew, you come up to the stage. Terry, you come up to the stage. So-and-so, you come up here. And it was all like confused, looking around, and it was like, what are we doing up here on the stage? So we pulled out the user agreements and said, Matthew, you agreed to dance like a chicken. You're going to
That's right.
in front of everybody.
You agreed to give up your firstborn child. Where are they? Go get them right now.
It's like, Terry, you just agreed to sing karaoke. Girls just want to have fun. You know, it was just crazy. And these people were embarrassed, but basically it was an exercise in training of read what it is that you're signing, which leads us down the path of training. Look, I strongly believe that we have a definitive lack of training. I think that we really need to coach, teach, train, mentor, educate our people across multiple levels. I mean, it's a definitive lack, and that's why we suck. That's actually why we suck, because we just lack the training, the knowledge, the skills, the experience. How often do we need to train? Because I don't think annual is enough. We have annual training requirements, but I think we need to unpack that.
it's a great topic, right?
Mhm.
Because and one of the reasons you touched on this is attacks against behaviors against people. It's
Mm,
really easy and it's really inexpensive.
mm,
So attackers like to go after what we call wetware, humans, people, right? We're just big bags of water. So not the hardware is really tough. The software, you got to put a lot of resources in, but wetware, that's easy. I can send an email or a text or whatever, send you to a bad web page. I mean, this is easy. And attackers are just like us. They like the easy button, right? So, okay, they're going to go after it, which is why almost all successful attacks have some element of behavioral, vulnerabilities as part of it. So, yes, training and up-leveling people, those who have are trusted in some way because they have some level of access. That's
mm,
very, very important.
mhm.
And it's a key factor. It's not the only thing, but it's a key factor to a very healthy cybersecurity program. So it is important. Now, when we look at the training, that's friction. Nobody jumps up and down and says, oh, I want my cybersecurity training. Where is it? I've been looking forward to it. Okay, maybe you and me, but we're a little twisted. But most people don't want that, right? They want to actually do their job. They want to get work done. They don't want to be inhibited by this. So there's a lot of challenges. And when we look at the effectiveness of this training, because there is an end result we want them to be more security savvy so that they don't create vulnerabilities and be exploited to the harm of the organization. We look at quality, right? We look at timing, right? The quantity of how often we're going to train. And then we also look at the timing aspects. Is it okay to not train your new hire for 6 months? Okay, let's talk about that. Is it okay to have a 5-minute training once every 3 years? Probably not okay, right? So, and then you have to look at the quality. Is it actually resonating? Or can somebody just get a deck and click to the last page and go, okay, right? So there are a lot of aspects to make training really effective. And it depends on your audience. It depends on what the executives are willing, because every hour you force training is an hour an engineer can't work on a product,
Mhm.
right? There is a trade-off there. There is a cost associated with this. So we have to be really effective and efficient. Right now, the industry says at a minimum, you want to train or refresh once a year. And I've seen organizations do this very, very well if the training is really effective, right? It captures and motivates, and people coming out of that training are like, yes, I am part of the security team. I want my products to be secure. I want my email to remain confidential. I don't want my work to disappear, because somebody's hacked it. I'm in. I'm going to partner. I'm part of it. Yes, you see huge effectiveness. I've also seen organizations that train literally every month. It may not be an hour-long training, but they're training every month. And people are like zone dead. They could care less. And the security is horrible.
Yeah.
So again, we need to find that balance between it needs to be quality, which means engaging, really targeting the areas that are most specific. Are you going to train people on every aspect of security? No, people are not going to be security experts. But if you know the 5 types of attacks or areas, those threat agents that are coming specifically after you, right? You know those 5 things. Well, then that's what you should be teaching, because now you're front loading it and saying, we're going to make this the most effective training by teaching them the most likely attacks that they're going to see or be a part of. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So again, there's a lot of thought behind it, but it really matters at the end of the day. What matters is how security savvy are they? How are they not contributing to an inordinate number of exploitations out there? So it's about fine tuning. And every organization is different. Every culture is also different. But if you can engage them and make it exciting and reinforce that continually and make it a positive experience, security is often not a positive experience for people, but if you can, and it completely is possible, right? Versus beating them on the head, I'm the security chief, you did something wrong, right? That can be turned around. You can truly make your environment security savvy. And I would rather have a security savvy workforce than a stack of firewalls. It makes that much of a difference. And our industry is starting to get there. The
I agree
technically
wholeheartedly.
oriented CISOs are starting to realize this is important.
I agree 100%. You know, a well-trained organization will be better for the organization. I've always believed that. I've always believed in training. And I think that when you invest in your people, you know, your people will be able to do more things for the company. It's one of those things to where how do we balance like what it is that they learn? I'll use gamification for an example. I think that if
Yes.
you can bring a level of gamification to the training, and realism to training, I truly believe that people will embrace it a little bit more, other than just sitting there like, you know, pardon the way I say this, like a monkey just tapping away on
Right.
the freaking keyboard because you're meeting annual training requirements. No, if we use a real world example and we use gamification, I think, because look, here's the deal. Different people learn different things differently. And if you're not meeting them where they are with how they learn, they're not going to receive the learning until it becomes a reality. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, you're absolutely right. You're spot on, right? You have to cater to the audience and the culture, right? The individual and the culture. And you can use things like positive reinforcement, gamification, and so forth. So, for example, gamification. And actually, I'll give you a good and a bad example in the same way. Many times you can use tools to send out fake phishing attempts to your organization just to see who's going to click and how often they click, and that gives you a good understanding how susceptible you are to a real attack. And you know, you may have an organization that sends these out, and as soon as somebody clicks on it, right, they get written up, they get their name on the board. I've actually seen within the company where people get publicly shamed.
The wall of
Right.
shame.
Wall of shame. This person did this. How dare? And oh, we're going to give you all this training and you have to go back and we're going to remove your credentials and you know, hey, this is going to impact your bonus. And all these negative things, just beating them down, and resentment forms. Seriously, resentment forms. You can only beat a dog so hard before, you know, it just doesn't want to be there anymore. So you get increased loss of good quality employees, you get resentment. Okay, bad stuff, but it can improve those percentages. All right, fair enough. On the other hand, we see organizations instead use gamification. Let's see which group did the best. Let's promote them. Pizza party, badges, swag, right? This 50-cent squeak doll, congratulations. Or even just going out of your way and saying, hey, you did awesome. Thank you. Right? That makes people feel good. And when somebody does it, when somebody clicks on the bad thing, right, instead of beating them with a stick, you're going in going, hey, how can I help? You know, you clicked on that could have impacted your work, make it relevant. Could have impacted your work, you know, the week's work that you just did on that project could have disappeared. How can I help you? Right? We don't want this. You don't want that. I don't want that. You don't want to have to work weekends trying to recover that. How can I help? Right? There's some training, or I can sit down with you. I'm not going to publicly shame you. I am going to be involved with you. It is a teamwork effort. We both succeed or fail together. So that type of fostering can really be helpful. And we see people stepping up and going, not only do I want to do good, I want to champion that in my group and in all the groups. Awesome. I love security champions. If I get people saying I want to be a champion, I'm doing a good job as a security leader.
And you hit on something very important there, and that's behavior reinforcement. Celebrating the victories is what I call it. Like I love a good victory day. And when you reinforce that behavior, it really allows the people to know what's good, what's bad, what's indifferent, because sometimes they just either don't know or they just need a quick reminder. Look, I will show a quick show of force in order to remind you that if I need to tattoo this on your forehead, this is where it's going to go. And, you know, and this, that, believe me, I've done a lot of that stuff when I worked at a service desk and when I worked, you know, in different network operation centers and this, that, and the other. So it's one of those things that oftentimes you have to reinforce that because people, you know, they do tend to forget. And I think that we oftentimes remember, you know, we need to remember that people are human. People
Yes.
make mistakes, but at the end of that, look, it's that human mistake that could cost the organization. It could cost you and your family and a lot of other things as well, too.
Yeah,
Here's,
and and,
yeah,
and
go ahead.
another good example in there, I'll give you a little best practice here. In every security training I do and I advocate and I build for organizations, one of the things that has to be in there is that continual engagement reinforcement. And it can be very, very simple. For that phishing attack, right? Many cases, you actually want them to report suspicious emails. And
Mhm.
so in the training, in fact, in the training that I do, I tell them, hey, if you suspect even just a little twinge in the back of your hair, right? Let me know. I said,
Mhm.
I would rather have you wake me up in the middle of the night 20 times for a false positive, right? Than not wake me up for that one time that it was actually something bad.
Mhm.
Because again, I've done crisis response. I know how important being informed in a timely manner is and getting a jump start on it. I can greatly reduce and contain issues that way. So please, right? And when somebody does send me something and it turns out to be a phishing, I'll amplify that. I will take that message and blast it out to people and go, hey, Terry reported this the other day. Everybody be on the lookout for this phishing attempt. This is totally bad. Terry spotted this before anybody else. Great job, Terry. Everybody else be on the lookout, right? So that reinforces you in reporting it, and it informs everybody else. And it also lets them know, hey, Terry's reporting this? Yeah, I could do that too.
Mhm.
Yes. Be part of the solution actively, right? So yeah, best practice.
I love that. And speaking of solutions, we have a conundrum and it needs a solution, and that's filling cybersecurity jobs. Look, there's like 600,000, I believe, that are open in the US alone.
Mm-hmm.
That's horrible. That really is horrible right there, to have that many jobs, that many positions that are out there to where we can't even find certified people or certified professionals to do that. It's an in-demand job. I mean, we all know, look, cybersecurity is not going away. It's in demand. It's not just a hot or a trending thing. It's here to stay. But the average person doesn't know how to get into the industry. How do we solve that
Yeah.
problem? How do we certify people? How do we get them into the industry? How do we close the gap of that 600,000 positions?
It's a tough problem, and it's a problem we've seen coming, right? So this is not new. This didn't just drop in our lap. We realized the growth was going to outstrip the demand. I'm sorry, the demand was going to outstrip the availability. So there's challenges on the academic kind of side,
Mhm.
being able to train people, or as you mentioned, certification is another path that can be complementary, and get experience and things of that sort. We have problems on the hiring organizations side. They tend not to write very good recs, right? And then we also have problems with the students themselves. They may be interested, hey, that's kind of sounds interesting, but they don't know that next step. Or they may go, hey, gee, compared to IT, this is like a 30% premium typically in salary. I want to go do that, but not realizing the amount of stress and ambiguity and the kind of work environment it is that may not be compatible with them. So they get in that position, they absolutely hate it, and they're miserable and they're gone. So there's lots of different challenges. There's not a single solution. But what we do need to do, and the academic industry is working very, very hard to create degree programs, to create certification programs, and then to reach out to prospective students all the way down into grade school.
Mm.
I speak in my community to grade school, to high school, and talk about these types of roles and what it's like. And for people getting interested, okay, you can pursue this. I also work with the community colleges and the universities. I also work with NSF and NIST and so forth, and help creating those. Okay, what's a real degree program? How is it needed? And again, in the challenges in our industries, those constantly have to change. I'm on 3 different academic advisory boards where I help those colleges, those universities keep pace and with the evolution. So in the academic space, we're making inroads, but academia moves slowly, even slower than government.
Mhm.
But we're getting there. On the employer side, we need to help employers better understand what talent they need, right? And then how to create those job recs that realistically align with what they need and the workforce out there. We've seen entry-level positions that essentially are the duties of, okay, 10 years experience and this and that are essentially a CISO. And yet they've written them, as an entry-level person. And so there's a lot of disconnections there. And, I work with several different staffing agencies and consortiums around chief human resource officer groups to make sure that they understand, they do need some help. The HR department doesn't really know how to write these recs. And so they're looking at previous recs, which are poorly written, and just duplicating them, which propagates the problem. It just keeps continuing a snowball effect. So educating organizations to help them understand what they need and then write those recs, that helps. And then lastly is the students, right? It's the people, the staffing that really want to get into this industry. And it can be very tough. It can be very tough to understand what you want to do and what's needed. But there are resources out there, right? Cyberseek.org is a great resource. Deidre Diamond has a staffing company called CyberSN. And one of the great things she did is she created these, I think it's about 45 different profiles of different types of security jobs, where a student can go out there and go, hey, which ones do I like? And for each one, it says what kind of degrees or what kind of certifications or what kind of experience, right? What's the salary range? What's your daily activities? And it helps them understand, hey, this is my dream job. And now how do I get there? Because I don't get to start my dream job, right? It's a journey. What's my entry to that? There are two areas in this problem, in this chasm, cybersecurity chasm that we have. We need entry level, right, roles, and especially it's really tough to staff highly technical, very technically specific roles. And on the high end is that cybersecurity leadership. Those are the toughest to place. But we need to funnel people in to be able to start filling those ranks and getting more entry-level people in so that they can learn, gain experience, just like we talked about. It's a journey, right? They get better and better and better over a year, and the more experience and knowledge they get, and the more they're connected to their community to learn from the collective base of knowledge, those wisdom, right? Now we've got that right talent in there that we can move things around, and people have career paths, and we're getting better and better and better. It's not an easy problem. And it doesn't get solved automatically. There's no magic wand. It's a lot of hard work in all the different areas.
Yeah, I love that. And, and everything that you said there really kind of reminds me of leadership and how leadership needs to take a more active role in mentoring their junior leaders and the people within their team to be more advocates out there. Like you say, you speak within your community. I think that's where it begins. A lot of kids, nowadays they want to go be TikTokers and YouTubers and all these and this, that, and the other, but you don't really hear kids saying, I want to be a cybersecurity expert. I know when I was growing up, I wanted to be a baseball player, basketball player. I wanted to be an athlete, doctor, this, that, and the other. I already know what the answer is. It's advocacy. That's what it comes down to. But I think that, the more of us that get out there and really kind of share our knowledge, our skills, our experiences, I think that we can inspire, or even more importantly, empower a generation to go into the field.
Yes. And it happens at all levels. I talk again at grade school and high school, and they say, hey, I want to be a gamer. And so I'll kind of throw out there, hey, on this whatever game they're playing, have you ever seen, the hackers that go in there and get all the bonuses and everything else? They're like, yeah, I hate those players, right? They're cheating. It's unfair. And I said, wouldn't you like to go after and kick them out of there? Yeah, I'd love that. Oh, I wish I had the power to do that. Congratulations. You just told me you wanted to be in cybersecurity. Oh, is that what they do? Yeah, that's one of the things we do. Cool. Oh, I'd love to do that. And it just never occurred to them. So advocacy, evangelism, but also we have to be able to communicate. What is it we do? There's some great new books out. In fact, I was just reading one to my kids the other night that talks about what does mom and dad do as a cybersecurity professional, right? And teaching them. And it's a great, colorful book for about a 7-year-old, but it starts teaching them because this is a new field, right? You and I are old enough to remember when it wasn't even called cybersecurity. It was called information security. And before that, it was called systems security, right? And So this has grown, and we haven't done a good job in educating our youth to say how important this is, how fun it can be, how much of a nightmare it can be as well, right? Let's give equal time here, but let them understand that if they've got an interest in this, there's a place for them. There absolutely is, and there's resources to help get them there.
Yeah. I love that, and here's my next question. I don't want to dive too deep into this one because I think I might actually overstep this one here. And that comes down to certifications. I know that we have some baseline certifications that I truly believe if you want to get into the industry, I'm saying we have to have a set of baseline certifications, but it really makes me want to ask the question, does the average employee really need a cert too?
Okay. So this may not make people happy, but hear me out here. When we talk about certifications, when we talk about degrees, they are always beneficial. There is always an environment where, okay, nobody's going to say, oh, you've got a certification, I don't want you, right? So it always adds something. But is it absolutely required? Not in all instances, right? There tends to be the greatest benefit when you're applying for a job because it can show differentiation. It can give that employer a comfort zone that at least they understand the basic skills necessary. They've got commitment, right? And that's what those certifications and even degrees showcase. So all things equal, and you've got two applicants, but one of them has certifications and the other doesn't, or one of them has a degree and the other doesn't, you're probably going to go for the one that has the degree or certifications. It gives you an advantage. Now, in reality, really what employers want is capability, right? If you have two applicants and one has all these degrees and certifications but no experience, doesn't really know how to get things done per se, and you've got another person who's been in the industry for 4 or 5 years, has done the job, knows it, knows the tool set, knows the skills, knows the behavior, has the soft skills, who are you going to choose? Well, I'm going to choose the one that knows the job, right? I want them to be able to hit the ground running. So the best scenario is to make sure that you've got the experience, because that's very important, right? Whatever experience you can get. And if you can add on those certifications and you can add on those degrees, that makes you more marketable, more sellable, and you become a hot commodity. Now, is it all required? No, there's a lot of jobs out there, but you're going to find, and a lot of people do for that entry level, if you've just got a degree or you've just got certs, it's tough to even get into that entry level job because almost every rec out there is going to say, well, we're looking for somebody that's got some experience. Maybe not the exact experience we're looking for in this exact tool, but you need to have some experience in this area before we're really going to consider you. So we have to close that gap. We really do.
That's a great point. I'm glad that you mentioned capability development because I think from an organizational standpoint and an individual responsibility, I'm going to put it out there like this. You must invest in your own capability. You have to, because like as you said right there, it makes you more marketable. It gives you the knowledge. It gives you the skills, maybe not necessarily the experience, but once again, you can get that experience, but you have to show that you have the baseline of those things up front. And I truly believe that a lot of people, look, I'm going to be honest with you. I took agile management. I'm a black belt Lean Six Sigma. I took the SHRM course, human resource management. I took contracting. I was investing in my own capability because a lot of people, look, I'm 52 years old. I'm still taking college classes. It's one of those things to where you have to invest within your education. Knowledge, skills, put things within your toolkit. I'm a huge advocate for that, but a lot of people tend to think, oh man, people that are like 25, they're like, I'm done with school. I ain't never going back to school ever again. Look, I'm 52 and I still take courses. What are your thoughts on that?
It's a continual learning experience, and it has to be because the environment we're protecting is constantly changing. Yeah. Right. The world used to have all your data centers in your businesses, and all of a sudden cloud came on, and now we're moving to the cloud and cloud first. That's a fundamental change in the battleground that you have to defend. So yeah, everything that we're adopting now, AI, ChatGPT, right? All these things, there's always going to be something new. If you remain stagnant in cybersecurity, your value decreases significantly, very, very quickly. So you have to keep learning. And that is something that some people will struggle in the industry with. If you want to go into your job and want to do the same thing day over day, it's predictable, you know what's going to happen, you know how to get it done, same tools, same people, cybersecurity is not good for you. I'll tell you right now. There's a high degree of chaos and ambiguity. And when I, at Intel, when I would hire people, I would tell them straight out, listen, you're now in cybersecurity. I guarantee you, in every 6 months to a year, your job will fundamentally change. It might be the primary tool you're using. It might be your team members. It might be the goals and objectives we have for you. It might be your title. It might be where you're reporting, right? But something is going to fundamentally change. And if you're not okay with that, this is not the role for you, right? We have to be able to be adaptable to that level of ambiguity. And if not, it creates tremendous stress and you get burnout really, really fast.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't understand change management. You got knowledge management, you got change management. And I think one of those, those are two huge programs. And I think that a lot of organizations just do not fully understand the concept of knowledge management, change management. I want to touch on change management because I really believe that AI is changing the future of how organizations operate. And I truly believe that we really need to figure out a way to move forward ethically with AI. But here's what I really kind of want to dive into in reference to AI. How is AI going to change the future of cybersecurity?
It would be easier to say, how isn't it going to change the future of cybersecurity? Because it literally will impact every aspect of it. And the thing is, and we're picking on AI right now because it's hot, right? It's absolutely hot. But, when you look at just tools or capabilities, the more powerful they are, the more they're going to be adopted. And the more they're going to be adopted, well, the more they're going to be invested in for more innovation and capability. And so with that, it becomes a much more powerful tool. Now, a tool can be used for good, right? But it can also be used for bad. So when those attackers, those threat agents we talked about, see a new tool out there, and the more powerful, the better, they're going to adopt it as fast as possible. And when they adopt it, well, bad things happen. And when bad things happen, then you call security. And now security has to respond to that. And more than likely, they're going to have to figure out, okay, I need to use this tool for good. We've seen this in the past time and time again. AI is not new, right? Years ago, we used to have packet sniffers, right? Ethereal was one of them. And basically, it was used by IT to look at packets to manage networks, right? To see where there were issues and whatnot. Well, attackers immediately grabbed it and you said, hey, I can sniff packets. I can grab data. I can, okay, great. We saw network scanners. And originally, it was the bad guys that said, I want this tool that can scan a network and see which systems are vulnerable. Why? Because I want to go attack them. Great. The defenders said, hey, I'm going to grab that same tool. I'm going to put a different name on it, right? I'm not going to call it a hacker tool. It's now a security tool. I'm going to scan my network to see which machines are vulnerable so I can patch them. These are just tools. AI will be another tool. It is another tool, but it will be used for maximum effect by the attackers and in turn, maximum effect by the defenders. Every aspect of what we do will be either degraded or enhanced, depending on who's using the tool, by AI.
Yeah. A lot of people don't understand that you still have to put a human element to it. Even though it's artificial intelligence, you still have to put human intelligence behind it in order to make it work, better than what it is. And don't get me wrong, it's capable, but we still have to put that human element to it. And I think that a lot of people just don't understand that. They really don't.
The humans create the purpose behind those tools, right? In deciding how they're going to wield them. And, we're using LLMs right now to look at code And the bad guys are looking at code to find the vulnerabilities. And the good guys are using LLMs to look at code to find the vulnerabilities so they can patch them, right? Where the bad guys are using it to exploit them. So we're doing that. We're using other LLMs. The attackers, we talked about phishing. Attackers now can make those phishing emails 100 times look more authentic, right? And increase the click rate. Well, the good guys are using LLMs to be able to scan and determine which emails are phishing attempts, right? And their effectiveness rate goes up. So it just simply becomes an escalation of warfare, right? It's an arms race. Now, the only people that lose are the ones that don't use the technology.
And it seems like every 5 minutes we got some guru popping up. It's absolutely amazing.
Oh, yeah.
It drives me nuts. It really does. Like, oh my goodness, I am I'm not overwhelmed with it because I ignore 99% of it. Don't be wrong. I've embraced AI. I use it. There's many tools out there. There's many resources out there. But the number one thing that I want everybody to understand of what you said there, it's a tool. It's a resource. Everybody is going to use it differently and they're going to get different results. So there's that right there. Continue to embrace the technology and you will continue to change and evolve along there with it. Matthew, I had a great time talking with you here today. I want to kind of wrap things up here, but before we go, I want you to share one golden nugget. If you had one golden nugget that you could share with everybody out here that watch this right here, what would that be?
Just one? Okay. Given the fact that, cybersecurity, it affects us all, right? As we embrace digital technology and even get to the point of relying on it, right? It becomes much more valuable and much more potentially impactful if the attackers go after it. So, one of the pieces of advice I give out to people because they want, hey, what can I do? Right? And it's a mindset. I want you to think about a couple things. One, you need to know what's valuable because that's what the bad guys are going to go after, right? They don't necessarily care about your cookie recipe unless it's, IP. They don't care about that, right? They care about your finances. They care about your personal data, your health data, all that, right? So know what is important and protect it. Weight your protection around that. If you're going to have a strong password, it really needs to be on your banking account, right? So protect it accordingly. And the other thing is, don't be an easy target, right? Again, the attackers like that easy button. And if you're easy, because maybe you do click on things whenever it comes into your inbox or on social media, on text, right? Whatever it is, just don't be that easy target. Those would be the two things. In doing so, you will elevate yourself and improve your security by an order of magnitude and protect that digital world that you love and has a huge impact on your life.
I love that. So what are some things you're focusing on right now? Do you have anything that's coming up, anything to be on the lookout for?
Lots of stuff. So again, you can kind of see Cybersecurity Insights. I've got a channel. I've got lots of different videos out there where I interview people and sometimes they just rant. But looking at where this industry is going in the next month, I'm going to be producing my annual predictions on what's going to happen in the next year and kind of best practices on how we kind of get ahead of that. So that's coming up. I'm talking a lot more to the CISO community to help them understand about how they need to communicate to those boards, how they need to be able to measure value and understand how they can contribute more. Because again, they keep asking for a 20% budget increase year over year. And yet they're seen as a cost sink, as an expense. And normally in businesses, you want to reduce the expense, not increase it year over year. So, we've got some challenges out there. But really, it's about advocacy and saying, hey, this is important. Let's get more people into the industry. Let's start doing things smart and working smarter, not harder, and keeping pace with the attackers. We got to communicate and collaborate, just like you and I are doing here. We're talking, we're sharing our experiences so other people don't have to learn through the fire. They can learn from other people in the industry and hopefully sidestep those pitfalls. It makes us all better and stronger, and it makes digital technology more trustworthy.
I love that. And I see that you got on your screen, your YouTube channel and everything. What's the best way for someone to connect with you?
Probably LinkedIn. Follow me on LinkedIn. I try and publish everything out there as well. LinkedIn is one of those great social networks that it's about professionals. So, I've got about a couple 100,000 people, professionals that follow me, and we go back and forth. We have great conversations, and we intentionally share and communicate and work with our industry. So if you're interested in cybersecurity, come out to LinkedIn, follow people that you believe are good in cybersecurity. Maybe it's not me, right? It's going to be you, Terry. They should all follow you. But follow those people that maybe either are in that dream job role that you want to get into, or are in your industry that have the pulse on what's going on from risk perspectives. Or simply entertaining, right? That talk about cybersecurity, but leverage that resource because it is valuable and it's a professional network. So you get a lot of the superfluous stuff goes away and you can actually get real good information.
I love it. Matthew, thank you so much for your time here today.
My pleasure.
All right. Thank you for watching this episode of Top Cyber Pro. If you want more tips, tools, techniques, and resources, then head on over to our website, TopCyberPro.com. Along with getting connected with us on all of our social media platforms for the latest cyber news, tips, training, and big ideas. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.